For the next 8 hours, you're going to perform an act of total biological surrender. You will lie down, shut off your primary defense mechanism, your vision, and enter a state of induced paralysis. To your modern brain, this is called getting a good night's sleep. To every single one of your ancestors living 50,000 years ago, this was a recurring suicide mission. We tend to think of sleep as this peaceful, restorative sanctuary, but if you look at it through the cold, unfeeling lens of evolution, sleep is the ultimate design flaw. It is a glitch in the system that should have seen us wiped off the map before we even learned to sharpen a stone. We've all heard the cozy myth that early humans slept in caves, gathered around a roaring fire, safe and sound, while the world outside stayed silent. It's a nice thought, isn't it? A prehistoric version of a weighted blanket. But here's the weird part. For the vast majority of our history, there were no walls. There were no doors. There was just you, the dirt, and a darkness so absolute it felt like a physical weight. What most people don't realize is that for an early human, the act of falling asleep wasn't just resting. It was voluntarily stepping onto the bottom of the food chain. Think about the sheer audacity of it. In a world where everything, from the microscopic bacteria in the water to the 500-pound cat in the tall grass, is trying to kill you, your body decides it needs to go offline. It's like a soldier in the middle of a battlefield deciding to take a nap without a foxhole. Evolution is usually ruthless. It trims away the weak and optimizes for survival. So why did it leave us with a requirement that makes us completely helpless for a third of our lives? And this is where it gets insane. The more we learn about how our ancestors slept, the more we realize that they weren't just lucky to survive the night. They were playing a high-stakes game of biological chess against a planet that wanted them dead the moment they closed their eyes. To understand why sleep was a death sentence, you have to understand the physical reality of the Pleistocene landscape. Imagine you are an early hominid. You don't have claws, you don't have thick fur to protect your neck. You can't run particularly fast, and your sense of smell is, frankly, embarrassing compared to a wolf's. Your only real superpower is your brain, your ability to plan, to see movement, and to use tools. But the second you enter REM sleep, that superpower is effectively unplugged. Early humans didn't have the luxury of deep sleep in the way we do now. In fact, the very idea of an 8-hour uninterrupted block of rest is a modern invention that would have gotten you eaten in the ancient world. Nature is a master of the ambush. Most apex predators, the things that specialized in eating our cousins, are nocturnal or crepuscular. They see in the dark better than you see in the light. While you are dreaming about a successful hunt, something else is using the heat of your body and the sound of your rhythmic breathing as a homing beacon. But it wasn't just the big predators. What about the things you couldn't see? Imagine sleeping on the ground in a tropical climate. You aren't just vulnerable to leopards, you are a buffet for venomous insects, snakes seeking body heat, and parasites that move through the soil. There was no such thing as a safe spot. Even the trees, which offered some height, were treacherous. If you fell into too deep a sleep, you'd simply lose your grip and fall to your death. This created a fascinating biological paradox. Our bodies desperately needed sleep to repair our massive, energy-hungry brains. But the environment made that very repair process a lethal liability. How do you recover from the day's exhaustion when the very act of recovery invites an ending? What most people don't realize is that our ancestors didn't just sleep in the way we do. They engineered a social defense system that turned the entire tribe into a single, multi-headed organism. If you were a lone human in the Pleistocene, you weren't a survivor, you were a snack. But here's the weird part. Evolution actually baked insomnia into our genetic code as a feature, not a bug. This is where it gets insane. Researchers studying modern hunter-gatherer groups like the Hadza in Tanzania found something startling. In a group of 30 people, there is almost never a moment where everyone is asleep at the same time. Over a 20-day period, researchers found that there were only 18 minutes total where every adult was simultaneously unconscious. This is called the sentinel hypothesis. We evolved to have different internal clocks, what we now call night owls and early birds, not so one person could be productive at 2 a.m., but so someone was always awake to hear the grass rustle. But even with a guard, the biology of the sleeper had to change. We are the only primates that sleep exclusively on the ground or on raised platforms, rather than in the safety of trees. Why? Because our brains got too big. As we evolved, we needed more REM sleep to process complex social information and tool-making skills. But REM sleep causes muscle atonia, temporary paralysis so you don't act out your dreams. If you're paralyzed in a tree, you fall. So we moved to the ground, traded the safety of the heights for the depth of the dream, and outsourced our protection to the fire and the sentinel sitting next to it. Now, let's look at this from the other side of the bushes. Imagine you are a Dinophilis, a false saber-toothed cat specifically adapted to hunt primates. You don't hunt by chasing, you hunt by shadows. You have a reflective layer behind your retina called the tapetum lucidum that makes the moonlight look like high noon. To you, a sleeping human isn't a formidable opponent. They are a stationary pile of protein. And this is where the science gets truly unsettling. Humans have a startle response that is tuned to a very specific frequency. If you've ever jerked awake because you felt like you were falling, or because you heard a faint crack in a quiet house, that is a ghost of a survival mechanism. In the ancient world, a deep sleeper was a dead sleeper. We evolved to be light sleepers in the first half of the night, when predators are most active. Think about the psychological toll that takes. For hundreds of thousands of years, the human psyche was forged in a state of hypervigilance. You weren't just resting, you were monitoring the acoustic environment while unconscious. Your brain was performing a constant, invisible triage. Is that the wind? Is that a cricket? Or is that the specific cadence of a four-legged footfall? We didn't just evolve to sleep, we evolved to sleep with one eye metaphorically open. But here's the weird part. As vulnerable as we were, we eventually found a way to cheat the system. We didn't evolve faster legs or sharper teeth. We mastered the externalization of safety. We invented the campfire. To us, a fire is a cozy aesthetic for a weekend trip. But in the ancient world, it was the first piece of active armor. It was a chemical wall. Fire changed the math of the night in two ways. First, it pushed back the darkness, creating a visual safe zone where our day-tuned eyes could actually function. But more importantly, it exploited a biological weakness in our enemies. Most nocturnal predators have eyes that are incredibly sensitive to light. That's how they see in the dark. To a leopard, a roaring campfire isn't just a light. It's a blinding, painful barrier. It's a sensory weapon. What most people don't realize is that fire allowed us to finally enter that deep, paralyzed REM sleep with a shred of confidence. It was the first time in millions of years of evolution that we weren't just hiding in the dark. We were colonizing it. But this created a new, terrifying dependency. If the fire went out, the wall vanished. The danger of sleep became a logistical challenge. Who stays awake to feed the flame? This forced us into a level of social cooperation that no other species had ever achieved. We didn't just sleep together for warmth, we slept together because we were each other's only alarm system. And this is where it gets insane. We are still living with the trauma of those millions of nights spent in terror. We think we've moved past the Pleistocene, but our biology hasn't received the memo. Every time you struggle to fall asleep in a new environment, like a hotel room, you're experiencing the first night effect. Science has shown that when we sleep in an unfamiliar place, one hemisphere of our brain stays more awake than the other. It remains in a state of high alert, processing sounds and movements that the sleeping half ignores. You are literally functioning like a dolphin or a bird, keeping half your brain on guard because your DNA still thinks there's a chance a cave hyena might be lurking behind the minibar. What most people don't realize is that our modern sleep disorders are often just ancient survival traits that have outlived their usefulness. Hypervigilance, night sweats, and the tendency to wake up at the slightest sound aren't glitches in your modern brain. They are the very reasons you exist today. You are the descendant of the most paranoid, easily startled humans in history. The heavy sleepers? They didn't make it. They were filtered out by the ruthless selection of the prehistoric night. It's a strange thought to carry with you to bed tonight. Every time you pull a blanket over your shoulders and lock your front door, you are performing a ritual that took 1,000,000 years to perfect. We have spent our entire history trying to make the act of closing our eyes a little less lethal. We've built concrete fortresses, invented light bulbs that mimic the sun, and created white noise machines to drown out the silence. But beneath the comfort of your memory foam mattress in your climate-controlled room, the ancient fear remains. Your brain is still listening. It is still calculating the distance to the door and the depth of the shadows in the corner of the room. We have mastered the world, but we haven't mastered the night. We've only pushed the darkness a little further back. As you drift off tonight, remember that you are doing the most dangerous thing your ancestors ever did. You are surrendering. You are trusting that the walls we've built are stronger than the instincts that kept us alive when we had nothing but a flickering fire and each other. The night hasn't changed. We just stopped looking into it. The question isn't why we sleep. The question is, what is still out there waiting for the fire to go out?